Hello again, Ecotopians. This presentation is all about primary and secondary literature and citation. This relates directly to the scientific method, and here is why. What we like to do, basically science is a way of knowing the world, and usually when you pick up something to read, you're trying to get information from the world. And a good critical thinker will always be wondering, what is the source of the information that I'm getting from this reading? If it's purported to be nonfiction, then it's supposed to be the truth. But is it or isn't it? How do you know? You should know that sometimes people speak of the truth. Sometimes they're right and sometimes they're wrong. Maybe they believe what they're saying and it's not supported by evidence, or maybe they're just not being logical whether they believe it or not. So it is pretty important to distinguish when you're reading whether something is from either the primary literature or the secondary literature. And what do I mean by that? Muy importante. So the primary literature is literature, well, basically when someone tells you something and you say, how do you know that's true? Their answers come in two forms. One form is somebody told me, or I read it somewhere, or I saw it somewhere, or I conducted an experiment. I personally and my team actually conducted an experiment and gathered data, and these are our results. And we were practicing the scientific method. Okay, so there's two forms. One is I heard it somewhere. The other is I gathered data myself, and this is what I found. The first part, I heard it somewhere or I read it somewhere, is the secondary literature. And the first part, where I did an experiment and this is my results, that's primary literature. Primary source, secondary source, same thing. So it's important to distinguish those things, and I need you to do that for this assignment. Before I go on, though, I just wanted to say that just because something is in the secondary literature does not mean it can't be trusted or it's not true. There are very good sources of information that are secondary literature. For instance, Bioscience, I believe, is a journal that often publishes summaries of science. So the summary itself is not primary literature. It's a summary of what other people have done, but it's done in a very sciencey context, written by scientists who are reviewing the scientific literature. Another, in my opinion, good source of information is the New York Times. The New York Times is pretty darn good news source, and very often they report in their Science Times. They have once a week they come out with a section on the latest in science, and they're doing the same thing. They're reporting what other people have been doing, other scientists in this case. Nothing is ever perfectly true, so you always have to read things with a critical eye and ask, I wonder if they got that right or not. And if it's important to you, you'd look into it more deeply. On the same token, the secondary, so primary literature, that is scientific literature, also is not 100% infallible. Let's say there's some, maybe you've looked up something that's published in the State of Jefferson Paranormal Society, a journal that purports to be scientific. I know a little bit about the state of Jefferson. I don't know much about paranormality. I don't know if it's ever studied scientifically or not. I know I would approach that kind of putatively primary literature with maybe a little extra critical thinking. I also wanted to say something, I'll actually give you an example of secondary literature that should be very good, that turns out to be not so good, and it's a sad story. One would think that a science textbook, one would think that a science textbook is really good, truthful information based upon the results of the scientific method. That is, chapter 3 on photosynthesis, the information there is based upon work done by scientists. Unfortunately, I recently had the experience of studying about human genetics from an introductory biology textbook. And if you've ever done any human genetics at all, you've probably heard things like eye color is inherited in a certain sort of way, and people with brown eyes have one kind of genes and people with blue eyes have another kind of genes, and you can figure out your parents' genotypes by the color of your eyes, that kind of stuff. And there's a whole bunch of what are called Mendelian traits that are supposed to be inherited among humans in a certain way. And these include things like having mid-digital hair and having a widow's peak if you're not balding like me, having free earlobes, having hitchhiker's thumb, having pinkies that go one way or the other. And these have been taught in introductory biology classes as examples of human genetics for decades, for generations. And I was doing that, I was teaching that, and I just wanted to look into it a little bit more. And I want to show you what I found. I found a website called The Myths of Human Genetics. I went, huh? What's this about? And it's written by John McDonald from the University of Delaware. I wonder who he is. I did some basic Googling on him, and it seemed like he was a regular old professor of science, and so probably he's done pretty good background research on his subject. And what he did was he went through all these different claims that these traits such as hair color, red heads, eye color, blue and brown eye, earwax, cleft chin, butt chin, cheek dimples, bent pinky, that the claims are that they are inherited in a certain sort of way, and he found that they're not. And we're critical thinkers, so he said, why? So we ask, why do we think that? Why does this man think, why does Professor McDonald think that eye color, for instance, is not an example of a simple genetic trait? Well, look what he did. He referenced all these works, and you can look into them. Here's a whole bunch of people, 1997, eye color changes past early childhood, the Louisville Twin Study Archive of Ophthalmology. This looks like he's done some pretty good research. He's referencing what is probably primary research. And so the bottom line is that unfortunately it seems some bad information has crept into biology textbooks, which are a source of they're secondary sources, okay? And for some reason they just perpetuate these myths if McDonald's thesis is true. Okay. So that's just the background. I hope you understand the difference between primary literature and secondary literature. And I want to give you some examples of how you can look at an article and tell whether it's from the primary literature or the secondary literature. So I think I went down here, I looked into some of these references here, and all I did was I highlighted the title, and I went to the internet. Let's see, let's do this one first. And actually what I did was I went to Google Scholar. It looks like I'm just in Google here. And I pasted in the title there, and I searched, and I came up with this. Digital, okay, so I click on it, and I'm trying to get to the article itself. So this is in PLOS, whatever that is. And so I'm looking here. I have an abstract. Here's the author's summary, and I'm just going to browse through this article and see if it's reporting research, that is their own data gathering, or if they're reporting on someone else's data gathering. So let's off to the side here. I see they have an abstract, an introduction, results, discussion, methods. So they actually had methods and acknowledgments and references. So the format of this paper is following pretty much the scientific method publication. It varies from journal to journal. So look through here. They got some figures. Whoa, man, they got funding from all sorts of different places. Introduction, results, a bunch of cool figures. Eye color, details and demographics of the study subject. So it looks like they were actually doing primary research. Okay, so I won't go into this much more. And okay, so I have found a reference that is from the primary literature. Number two, I did another one, the genetics of human iris color and patterns. That sounded interesting to me. I want to know, is this primary literature or secondary literature? Again, I'm in Google Scholar. You can Google Google Scholar, and that gives you scholarly literature, not news or videos. And so we click on that. and it comes up, Wiley Online Library. Here we go. Did I get lucky? I did. I got lucky and I got the whole thing. Okay, so what's this article all about? Okay, a couple of authors. I'm just going to browse through the subjects here. They have a summary. They have an introduction, morphology of the iris, measures of iris color and patterns. They're actually getting to subject matter without telling me how they conducted an experiment. Eye color, genetics of eye color. They're not giving me, here's a table too that has a bunch of information with references. So this article is not gathering data. They're using other people's data to summarize a situation. They're talking about some gene polymorphism and some other stuff. I'm going to go all the way to the bottom. Wow. They have a bunch of references. It is a scholarly work, but it is not primary literature. Okay? These guys did not gather data. They let other people gather the data, and they are summarizing it for us. Okay? So basically, that is kind of what I'm going to want you guys to do in your assignment. So I'm going to bring up that assignment right now. And honestly, really at this point, if you are a good reader, then you don't need to continue listening. You can just open up this assignment number 2, sources and citation, and follow the instructions. But I'm going to sort of run you through it so you understand what, if you would prefer to hear me talk about it rather than read what I say. So the purpose of this assignment is to show that you know the difference between primary and secondary sources, and to use a citation style dictated to you by a fictitious publisher. So both distinguishing between primary and secondary sources and being able to cite something just once, one citation, using a very formal method. Okay, so when you do this, when you see something in bold, it says type your name here, just open up the document and type your name here. And furthermore, down here, you want to find a primary source on the internet. I don't care what it is, as long as it's a primary source. So if you're interested in fluoride in drinking water and the health effects, Google it, find out, find me a primary source of someone who in that subject area. Type the subject area in and just replace my bold font with your stuff. What is a general subject? Fluoride in drinking water and human health. Okay, what is the URL? Just copy it, go over to here, copy the URL and paste it in here. Okay, why do that? Because I want to come in here and I just want to click on your source and check you. Okay, so put it in there so I can do it. Do copy and paste. Do not type it in. It won't work. Just copy and paste the URL. And then say, what evidence do you have that it's a primary source? And I said, it's clear that the authors gathered their own data, and give a little example. They measured the eyeballs of a bunch of people or something like that. So that's a primary source. Do that same thing for a secondary source. And then I have asked you to find 3 more references, at least one of which is a primary source, and list them below. So I want you to go out into the world of the literature and just bring back some examples of primary and secondary sources and cite them down here. Okay? Should be a pretty quick assignment. You should be able to do it in 10 or 15 minutes. The last part is the citation styles. Now here's the deal, is part of online programs at HSU are that all your written assignments, my students should follow citation standards, and there aren't any formal papers required in this class. You're conducting your own experiment, but I'm not requiring you to do background research on it, which would involve citation. Yet, I want you to use citation. I want to make sure that you know how to use citation. So I have this very simple exercise here. Here's how it works. A little bit of background. Yes, everyone needs to, in the scientific world and in the scholarly world, cite their references. And there are different styles for doing that. And every single journal or publisher in which an author publishes has its own different quirks on how to make citations. So I had to choose one for you. So what I did was I went to a journal that I have published in, my mushroom work. I have published in Mycologia, which is a journal for those people who study fungi. And every year they publish the instructions to authors. And you'll see that this is 5 pages long. 5 pages, very small font, double spaced, with a huge number of very specific requirements. It can drive you crazy making a manuscript that that follows all the requirements required, but you have to do it or you won't get published. So actually, scientists can spend a lot of time formatting their papers to be specific for a journal. And then when they switch, when they get rejected from one journal, they have to publish in another journal and have to reformat everything. So it's really frustrating. So anyway, what I've decided to do, instead of having you read through this, which would be torture, is what I've done is I've just created, I actually copied out of Mycologia one citation. You'll see that this citation is from a work done by 3 different authors, Zhang, Beckwith, and Morris in 1994. Here's their title, and here's their journal abbreviated, and here's the journal, the volume, and here are the page numbers. And I want you to conform exactly to that style. Come up with a fictitious citation. You have to use your imagination. I'll just give you an example. Rock types affect people's posture when they walk on them barefoot in coastal Aborigines of New Zealand. This is going to be published in the Journal of Barefoot Living, volume 23, pages 21 through 22, something like that, published by Smith and Jones. I think you can do better than that. Anyway, that's what I want you to do. Be creative and come up with your own fictitious citation and write it down following this exact format. Okay, I said your citation must conform to the above style. Note this, and I just gave you some tips. All I did was I looked at this and I turned it into text. Note that the first name is given only as an initial after the surname without a separation by a comma. So it's Beckwith SM. Mine would be Murphy JF, and so forth. I want your authors to be separated by a comma. Let's see, I want you to have use more than one author. And your authors shall be separated by a comma. There's a period after the author's last name, after the year of publication, after the title, and at the end of the citation. And yes, I am going to be counting the periods, and every little typo you get wrong is going to count against you in this assignment. So be very persnickety. Taxonomic names are italicized and capitalized appropriately. You will be using a taxonomic name in your thing. I think you have to include a yes, you have to include a coast redwood in your title. So anyway, journals are abbreviated according to the standard abbreviations given in CASI, except without periods. So you'll notice here's a journal abbreviation, Proc Nat Acad Sci. Okay, that is a standard abbreviation. You need to come up with the proper abbreviation for a journal. And what is this CASI to which I refer? It doesn't matter. Just Google it. CASI, Google it, hit it. It's the CASI Search Tool Usage Agreement. Click on it, come down here and enter your journal. It has to be a real journal. Maybe there's a journal called Genetics. Type it in, search, and wait. And wait. And wait. Aha. Okay. Choose one. I don't care. Click on it. And here's it's a discontinued serial. The code. No, the abbreviated title. Ad mal genet. All right. So you need to put that in. Copy it and put it into your assignment. Except without periods. Okay. So do that. And just follow the rest of these directions, guys. Your fictitious citation should have more than two authors. It must refer to a real existing journal, so you can find it in Cassie and include the taxonomic name of the coast redwoods. And then type your fictitious citation below, fill it in here, save it, upload it, and you're done. Okay? This is just basic skills, part of critical thinking, part of being a scientist. Not just being a scientist, but being a scholar and being a critical thinker, knowing the difference between primary literature, secondary literature, and understanding citations. That's all. All right. Have fun. Get it done. Talk to you later.